The lunar research facility buzzed with people rushing about. For decades, Earth had known about the Galactic Empire, but pretended to be primitive, while secretly building advanced technology that developed along completely different lines than the Empire's. Captain Jun Park stood before the large holographic display, showing his ship, the Thunderbolt. The sleek vessel represented humanity's best hope against Imperial invasion. Its curved hull concealed weapon systems unlike anything seen in the known galaxy. "How are the final checks going?" Jun asked, his eyes never leaving the display. Lieutenant Hyunblee looked up from his station. "Quantum weapons show 98% stability in all simulations, sir. Better than yesterday's results." Jun nodded, satisfied. The quantum weapons were their ace. Technology the Empire had never pursued, believing it too unstable. Earth scientists had solved problems Imperial engineers didn't even know existed. Engineer Mina Kim approached with her datapad. "Shield systems are exceeding expectations, Captain. The phasing technology will make us nearly invisible to Imperial scanners. They'll have trouble targeting what they can barely detect." Jun allowed himself a small smile. The team had worked tirelessly for years, knowing this day would come. Earth's strategy had always been to appear worthless to the Empire, not worth conquering, not worth noticing, while preparing in secret. The heavy doors to the command center slid open with a hiss. Admiral Ta Han rushed in, his normally composed face marked with tension. The room fell silent. "They're here," he announced simply. A cold wave swept through the room. Everyone knew what they meant. Admiral Han continued, "A full Imperial fleet just entered the solar system. Our deep space observation posts are tracking 27 warships on direct approach to Earth." Jun's expression hardened. "How long do we have?" 12 hours at most," the Admiral replied. "The Security Council has initiated diplomatic contact protocols, but—" His voice trailed off. Everyone in the room knew the Empire's standard approach to primitive worlds, a show of overwhelming force followed by demands for total surrender. "But we all know how that will go," Jun finished. He straightened his back and turned to face his crew. "How soon can we launch?" Mina consulted her displays. "The Thunderbolt can be ready in 6 hours, Captain. But I must remind you, the quantum weapons system has never been tested in actual combat conditions." "Then will be the test," Jun said firmly. He looked around at the faces of his hand-picked crew. "Alert everyone. We launch in 5 hours." The room burst into activity. Technicians rushed to complete final systems checks, while officers contacted crew members throughout the base. In the chaos, Admiral Han pulled Jun aside. "You understand what's at stake here," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Jun nodded. "Everything. The other prototypes won't be ready for months. The Thunderbolt is all we have." The Admiral's eyes were grave. "If you fail, there won't be an Earth to come back to." "We won't fail," Jun replied. As the Admiral left, Jun turned to the viewport that overlooked the massive underground hangar. There sat the Thunderbolt, Earth's secret weapon. Its dark hull absorbed light rather than reflected it, just one of many technologies developed specifically to counter Imperial advantages. Jun thought about the years of preparation, the classified records of first contact that the public never knew about, the Imperial scout ships that had visited Earth, cataloging it as pre-spaceflight primitives and marking it for eventual colonization when more valuable worlds had been conquered. The Empire had no idea what awaited them. "Captain, we need you in engineering," Mina called from across the room. "The quantum matrix is showing some unusual patterns during the power-up sequence." Jun nodded and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, he allowed himself one moment of doubt. The Thunderbolt was humanity's masterpiece, but it was still untested against the real enemy. 27 Imperial warships meant thousands of crew members, fighters and weapons, all focused on Earth. And standing against them would be one ship with a crew of 40. The elevator doors opened to the engineering deck, and Jun pushed his doubts aside. The time for preparation was over. The time for action had come. The Imperial flagship Dominance loomed over Earth like a giant black shark. Its massive hull made Earth's satellites look like tiny toys floating in space. Admiral Ryu stood on the command bridge, looking down at the blue planet with cold eyes. "Primitive," he said quietly. "They still use fossil fuels and wage wars against each other. This planet is barely worth our time." The Admiral's thoughts reflected standard Imperial policy. Worlds with pre-spaceflight civilizations were typically conquered quickly, their populations used for labor, their resources harvested for the Empire's endless expansion. Commander Sook approached with a data tablet. She was Ryu's most trusted officer, having served with him for 15 standard years across 3 galactic sectors. "Admiral, our scans show their technology is indeed primitive, but the natives are attempting to communicate," she reported. "They've sent representatives to their small orbital station, requesting peaceful talks." Ryu laughed, a sound without warmth. "How quaint. They think we came to talk." He paused, studying the planet's blue oceans and swirling cloud patterns. "Let them believe we're considering their request. Meanwhile, deploy landing craft to their largest population centers. Standard intimidation protocol." "Yes, Admiral," Commander Sook replied, relaying the orders throughout the massive ship. Within minutes, dozens of Imperial shuttles launched from the Dominance and its escort vessels. They streaked toward Earth's atmosphere, their black hulls heating to a dull red as they descended. On Earth, the United Nations Security Council gathered in emergency session. The room was filled with tension as world leaders watched real-time footage of the Imperial ships entering Earth's atmosphere. "They're heading toward major cities on all continents," reported the Defense Secretary. "New York, Beijing, Moscow, London, Tokyo, Rio, Cairo, all targeted simultaneously." The Secretary General stood, her face grave. "They've completely ignored our attempts at peaceful communication. They mean to frighten us into submission." She looked around the room at the assembled leaders. "We have no choice. We must activate the Thunderbolt Protocol." The authorization codes were transmitted instantly to the lunar base, on the far side of the moon, hidden from both Earth and the Imperial fleet. Captain Jun Park received the message he had been preparing for his entire career. "Authorization confirmed," he announced to his bridge crew. "Prepare for immediate launch. All hands to battle stations." Throughout the hidden ship, crew members moved with practiced efficiency. The Thunderbolt had been designed for this exact scenario, humanity's last line of defense against an overwhelming alien force. In engineering, Mina Kim oversaw the quantum core as it powered up. The revolutionary engine hummed to life, emitting a blue glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. "Quantum core stable," she reported. "Facing shields active." Lieutenant Hyun monitored the weapons systems, all quantum torpedoes armed and ready. Targeting systems online. On the bridge, Jun activated the ship-wide communication system. His voice reached all 40 crew members as they made final preparations. "This is Captain Park," he began. "For years, we have trained for this day. The Thunderbolt represents humanity's greatest achievement, technology the Empire believes impossible. Today, we will show them how wrong they are." He paused, looking at the determined faces of his bridge crew. "The enemy believes Earth is defenseless. They expect us to surrender without a fight. They have no idea what awaits them." Jun's voice hardened. "Everything we've worked for comes down to this moment. Earth is counting on us." As he spoke, Imperial shuttles began their disciplinary strikes on major cities. Their weapons weren't designed for maximum destruction. Not yet. This was merely a demonstration of power intended to terrify Earth's population into immediate surrender. In New York, energy beams sliced through skyscrapers. In Beijing, Imperial shuttles hovered over government buildings, weapons pointed downward. In every targeted city, panic spread as humanity faced its first alien attack. Undetected by the Imperial fleet, the Thunderbolt rose from its lunar hiding place. The ship's revolutionary phasing technology rendered it nearly invisible to Imperial scanners. Its dark hull absorbed rather than reflected light, and its quantum signature was unlike anything the Empire's sensors were calibrated to detect. June studied the tactical display showing the positions of the Imperial fleet. 27 warships arranged in standard Imperial formation, with the massive dominance at the center. They were completely focused on Earth, their sensors pointed toward the planet, their attention fixed on the primitive civilization they expected to conquer with ease. They had no idea that humanity's defender was already behind them, weapons locked on the Dominance's engines. "Prepare to fire on my mark," Jun ordered, his voice calm despite the weight of Earth's future on his shoulders. "Let's show the Empire exactly what they overlooked." Admiral Ryu stood on the Dominance's bridge, studying the holographic map of Earth. His fingers hovered over major cities as he considered which should face the first serious bombardment. Tokyo might serve as a suitable example, he mused, or perhaps New York. Imperial protocol called for escalating displays of force. First came the warning shots, then destruction of military targets, then civilian infrastructure. Finally, if resistance continued, an entire city would be erased. The pattern had broken the will of 100 worlds before Earth. Commander Suk's voice cut through Ryu's thoughts. "Admiral, unidentified vessel approaching at high velocity." Ryu turned, annoyed by the interruption. "What vessel? Earth has no combat-capable spacecraft." "See for yourself," Suk said, pointing to the tactical display. The screen showed a small craft moving rapidly toward the Imperial fleet. Its speed was unlike anything in Imperial records for a civilization at Earth's development stage. "A mistake," Ryu said dismissively. "Perhaps one of our scout ships returning." Before he could finish speaking, the tactical display flashed red. 3 Imperial escort vessels at the fleet's outer edge suddenly disappeared from the screen. "What happened?" Ryu demanded, his voice rising. "Unknown, Admiral," reported a tactical officer, his fingers flying across control panels. "The ships are gone, completely destroyed." "Impossible," Ryu snapped. "Show me visual confirmation." The main screen switched to a view of space where the 3 ships had been. Only expanding clouds of debris remained, glittering in the sunlight. "What kind of weapon did this?" Commander Suk asked, her voice hushed. The tactical officer looked up, confusion clear on his face. "Our systems didn't register any weapon signature, Commander." The ship's shields reported no impact whatsoever before catastrophic failure. Ryu's eyes narrowed. "Find that vessel. All ships, battle formation." Aboard the Thunderbolt, Captain Jun Park watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The quantum torpedoes had performed even better than expected, bypassing Imperial shields by shifting partially out of normal space before detonation. "Quantum torpedoes functioning as designed," he noted. "Their shields are useless against our weapons." His bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, the years of training showing in their focused movements. Lieutenant Hyun looked up from the weapons console. "Targeting systems locked on their command ship, Captain." Jun nodded. "Fire when ready, Lieutenant." The Thunderbolt launched another volley of quantum torpedoes toward the massive Imperial flagship. But the Dominance was already moving, surprisingly agile for its enormous size. "They've spotted us," Minna reported from her station. "Imperial vessels are breaking formation and moving to attack positions." Space around the Thunderbolt suddenly lit up as dozens of energy beams lanced outward from the Imperial ships. The standard Imperial tactic was overwhelming firepower, saturating an area with so many weapons that no enemy could possibly evade them all. "Evasive pattern Delta," ordered Jun calmly. The Thunderbolt responded instantly, its experimental drive allowing it to phase partially in and out of normal spacetime. To observers, the Earth ship seemed to flicker and jump, never quite where the Imperial weapons targeted. Energy beams that should have destroyed the small vessel passed harmlessly through empty space. The Thunderbolt moved with impossible agility, changing direction instantly without the acceleration limitations of conventional drives. "They can't lock onto us," Minna reported from engineering, her voice tight with concentration as she managed the phasing drive's power levels. "Our quantum signature is confusing their targeting systems." The Thunderbolt reappeared behind an Imperial cruiser, fired its weapons at point-blank range, then vanished again before the other ship's explosion had even begun. On the Dominance's bridge, Admiral Ryu watched in growing rage as the tactical display showed his fleet's coordinated fire missing the Earth vessel completely. Another Imperial ship disappeared from the screen in a flash of light. "Impossible," he shouted, slamming his fist on the command console. "That ship cannot exist. These primitives don't have that technology." Commander Sook studied the sensor readings. "The vessel appears to be shifting its phase state." "Admiral, it's partially existing outside normal space when our weapons fire. No species develops phase technology before standard FTL drives," Ryu insisted. "It violates the normal technological progression." "Evidently, the humans didn't follow the normal progression," Sook replied quietly. Ryu's eyes blazed with anger and disbelief as another Imperial vessel erupted into flames. He had never faced such a situation in his 3 centuries of military service. "Converge all vessels," he ordered, his voice rising to a shout. "Surround that ship. I want continuous fire from all directions. That ship must be destroyed." The Imperial fleet began to move into a sphere formation, attempting to trap the Thunderbolt in a web of overlapping fields of fire. 22 warships remained, each powerful enough to destroy a planet's entire defense force under normal circumstances. But as Ryu was quickly learning, nothing about Earth's defense was normal. The Thunderbolt flickered into visibility directly in front of the Dominance, so close that the bridge crew could see its dark hull through the viewports. It fired once, a direct hit that shook the massive flagship, then vanished again before the Imperial gunners could respond. "Damage report," Ryu demanded. "Forward shields failed completely," reported an officer. "Hull breach on decks 12 through 15. Whatever that weapon is, our defenses have no answer for it." For the first time in his long career, Admiral Ryu felt something he had never experienced in battle before. Fear. The Thunderbolt shook violently. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as Mina's voice came through the comm system. "Hull breach on deck 3. Sealing emergency bulkheads," she reported, her voice steady despite the danger. Jun gripped his command chair as another blast rocked the ship. The Thunderbolt had destroyed 5 Imperial vessels, but the remaining fleet had adjusted their tactics. Instead of trying to target the Earth ship precisely, they were now simply flooding zones of space with weapons fire, hoping to catch the Thunderbolt during its brief moments of normal phase. "Shields down to 30%, Lieutenant Hyun called out. "We can't take much more of this concentrated fire." Jun studied the tactical display. Despite their revolutionary technology, the Thunderbolt remained a prototype, the first of its kind, and not designed to face an entire Imperial fleet alone. They needed to change the battlefield. "Set course for the asteroid belt," he ordered. "Maximum speed." The Thunderbolt's engines flared bright blue as the ship accelerated away from Earth. On the main viewer, the Imperial fleet appeared to hesitate momentarily, perhaps surprised by the Earth vessel's apparent retreat. "They're following," reported the sensor officer. "All remaining vessels in pursuit formation." Jun nodded. Everything was going according to the second phase of Earth's defense plan. On the Dominance, Admiral Ryu stood before the tactical display, his face twisted with rage. The Earth ship had damaged his flagship, destroyed 5 Imperial vessels, and made the mighty Imperial fleet look foolish. Such humiliation was unprecedented. "Full pursuit," he ordered. "Every ship. Maximum speed. Do not let that vessel escape." Commander Sook approached cautiously. "Admiral, perhaps we should leave some vessels to continue the Earth operation. Our primary mission now is to destroy that ship," Ryu interrupted, his voice cold with fury. No native species has ever challenged Imperial supremacy like this. Never. I will hang that ship's captain from my bridge before this day ends. The entire Imperial fleet accelerated after the Thunderbolt, abandoning their attack on Earth. Ryu's pride would not allow the primitive vessel to escape after inflicting such damage. The Thunderbolt reached the asteroid belt first, diving into the dense field of space rocks that orbited between Mars and Jupiter. June guided the ship through a pre-planned route, weaving between larger asteroids with practiced precision. "Everyone remember your training," he told his crew. "The tight quarters give us the advantage with our maneuverability. The Imperial ships are too large to match our movements here." What he didn't say, what everyone aboard already knew, was that they weren't alone in the asteroid belt. For years, Earth had been placing special packages throughout the field, disguised as ordinary asteroids. As the Thunderbolt passed each one, hidden sensors detected its unique quantum signature and powered up. "Ready for attack pattern Sunstorm," Jum said as they reached the designated area. The Imperial fleet followed into the asteroid belt, their larger ships forced to reduce speed to avoid collisions. Admiral Ryu watched from the Dominance as his fleet spread out, trying to maintain pursuit while navigating the dangerous field. Why would they come here? Commander Sook wondered aloud. It only delays the inevitable. Then the Thunderbolt did something unexpected. Instead of continuing to flee, it suddenly reversed course, charging directly back toward the pursuing Imperial fleet. "They're attacking," Ryu said in disbelief. "One ship against 17. Madness." But as the Thunderbolt approached, the true plan revealed itself. Dozens of asteroids throughout the field suddenly lit up with energy signatures, their outer rock layers falling away to reveal automated weapons platforms. Before the Imperial fleet could react, the platforms unleashed a barrage of quantum mines that phased into existence directly among the Imperial formation. "Evasive action," Ryu shouted, but it was too late. The mines detonated, creating spheres of warped space-time that tore through Imperial shields as if they weren't there. Ships tried to turn, to flee the sudden trap, but their size worked against them in the crowded asteroid field. Some collided with space rocks, others with each other as they attempted to evade the mines. Through this chaos flew the Thunderbolt, weaving between explosions with impossible grace. Its quantum weapons struck with surgical precision at the critical systems of the damaged Imperial vessels, turning minor damage into catastrophic failures. "Admiral," Commander Sook reported, her voice shaking slightly, "we've lost 14 vessels. The remainder are reporting critical damage to engines and weapons." Admiral Ryu stared in disbelief at the tactical display. Where once his mighty fleet had filled the screen, now only 3 ships remained operational: the Dominance and 2 cruisers, all showing significant damage. "What are they?" he whispered, shock replacing anger. "How could we have missed this level of technology? It's impossible. Impossible." On the Thunderbolt's bridge, Jun watched the Imperial fleet's destruction with grim satisfaction. The plan had worked better than anyone had dared hope. Earth's secret technological path, focusing on quantum mechanics rather than the conventional technologies used by the Empire, had created weapons the Imperials had no defense against. "Status report," he ordered. "Hull damage on decks 3 and 4, replied Mina. "Phasing drive operating at 76% efficiency. Quantum weapons at 82%. We're hurt, but still fighting." June nodded and set his eyes on the 3 remaining Imperial ships. "Set course for the Dominance," he ordered. "Time to end this." The Thunderbolt emerged from the asteroid field, its hull scared and scorched from battle damage. Through the viewport, Jum could see the 3 remaining Imperial ships, the massive flagship Dominance, and 2 damaged cruisers. Just hours ago, these were part of a mighty fleet of 27 warships. Now, they were all that remained. "Status report," Jun requested, his voice showing none of the exhaustion he felt after hours of intense combat. "Weapons at 64% capacity," Lieutenant Hyun replied. Shields at 41%. We've lost 2 crew members. His voice dropped slightly at this last part. June took a moment to honor their sacrifice before focusing on the task at hand. They couldn't bring back the dead, but they could ensure their sacrifice wasn't in vain. Final attack vector, he ordered. Prepare to deploy the quantum cascade. The bridge crew exchanged glances. The quantum cascade was their ultimate weapon and completely untested in actual combat. Theoretical models suggested it could tear apart matter at the subatomic level, but the energy requirements were enormous, and the effects potentially unstable. Captain, deploying the cascade will drain our remaining power reserves. Minna warned from engineering. If it doesn't work, we'll be defenseless. It will work, Jum said with quiet confidence. Proceed with the preparations. On the Imperial flagship Dominance, Admiral Ryu stared at the small Earth vessel through the main viewport. His once proud fleet lay in ruins, destroyed by a single ship from a planet the Empire had classified as primitive. They developed along a different path, he said quietly to Commander Suk, who stood faithfully at his side, despite the chaos around them. While the Empire focused on plasma technology and gravitics, they pursued quantum mechanics and phase shifting. We never considered it viable. Commander Suk nodded. The Empire's technological progression models will need complete revision. No one could have predicted this. Orders, Admiral, she asked, as damage reports continued to flood in from all decks. The Thunderbolt was approaching their position, and the Dominance's weapon systems were barely functional. Ryu hesitated, then made his decision. Prepare my personal shuttle. Load all battle data and transmit to Imperial Command with highest priority. He turned to face his second-in-command. The Empire must know what happened here. What we face. The Thunderbolt moved into position, its weapons locked onto the Dominance. Jun opened a communication channel. Imperial vessel, this is Captain Jun Park of Earth Defense Ship Thunderbolt. Your fleet has been destroyed. Surrender or be eliminated. Admiral Ryu's face appeared on the view screen. Despite his defeat, he maintained the cold dignity of an Imperial officer. You have won this battle, Captain, but the Empire spans thousands of worlds. This is merely the beginning. Perhaps, replied Jun calmly. But you will carry our message back to your Empire. Earth is not defenseless, not primitive, and not yours for the taking. The communication ended as a small shuttle launched from the Dominance's hangar bay. Jun ordered his weapons officer to allow its safe passage. One survivor to tell the tale was part of the plan. Deploy the quantum cascade, Jun ordered once the Imperial shuttle was at a safe distance. The Thunderbolt's remaining energy reserves flowed into the experimental weapon. The space around the 3 Imperial ships began to distort visibly. Light itself seemed to bend and twist as the quantum cascade activated, creating a sphere of altered physics that engulfed the enemy vessels. The effect was both beautiful and terrifying. The Imperial ships didn't explode so much as unravel. Their matter pulled apart at the subatomic level as the fundamental forces holding them together were temporarily rewritten. Within seconds, nothing remained but scattered particles where mighty warships had once been. The bridge crew of the Thunderbolt sat in stunned silence, awed by the power they had just unleashed. Take us home, Jones said quietly. Back on Earth, people poured into streets as news of the victory spread. Governments worldwide released the long classified information about humanity's secret space program and the threat they had been preparing for. Celebrations erupted across the planet as humanity realized they were not alone in the universe, and that they had successfully defended their world. In the Lunar Command Center, Admiral Tahan was already reviewing plans for a fleet of Thunderbolt-class vessels with his staff. How soon until we can begin full production? He asked. 6 months for the first 5 ships, came the reply. The quantum technology is still difficult to mass produce. Admiral Han nodded. It will be enough. The Empire will return, but we'll be ready. Aboard the Thunderbolt, as they set course for Earth, Jun looked at the tired but proud faces of his crew. These men and women had just changed the course of human history. "We've changed everything today," he told them simply. "Humanity is no longer alone in the galaxy, and no longer overlooked." The end.